Manifesting in the age of Afrofuturism, the diesel funk way. First rule, everybody is good at something. Everybody is good at something. Everybody is good at something. I can draw anything. I'm pretty good at it. I've been doing it since I was 2 years old. I can draw any environment, any vehicle, any prop. I've made my living from it. It's one of the things I can do. It's what I'm good at. So what I want you to keep in mind is that I'm good at this. Find out what you're good at. And if you look at what I'm doing here, most of what I'm doing is involved with science fiction, speculative fiction, things like that, comics. I'm a comic book artist, and I'm good at it. The thing that is most important is the word manifesting. Manifesting motion, manifesting still images, manifesting anything that can move what's in your mind forward. That's what it's about. It's about willing to change and alter how you look at the world, look at the environment, and move forward with that. In my particular case, I started out in Afrofuturism. Now, you might ask, well, what is Afrofuturism? I've heard of futurism, but what is Afrofuturism? Well, futurism is where you take ideas, social mores, language, culture, and you look at it in a forward-thinking manner. That's called futurism. Afrofuturism is where you take Afrocentric concepts and you fuse that with futurism. So you have Afrofuturism. So what do you do with that? What does that mean, Afrofuturism? Well, I'm a little grown up a little bit in age here, and my introduction to Afrofuturism was Lieutenant Uhura, Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry created this fantastic character. Nichelle Nichols is this amazing actress. She took the role. She almost quit the role, actually, and Reverend King convinced her to stay with the part. So that was my first introduction, because prior to that, there were no black people in outer space. Second introduction, Lando Calrissian. Now, Lando, yes, it's true. Lando was the only black person in the galaxy. He was. It's true. But somehow, Lando was able to make his way and destroy a second Death Star, by the way. He did pretty good with that. So these were my introductions to science fiction, to speculative fiction, to seeing people who look like me, like my children, how they would exist in a science fiction and a fantasy environment. So I'm good at drawing black people in spaceships. That's what I'm good at. I'm sorry, I had to put it that way, but it's true. It's what I do. Okay? Now, we're going to move on here. Now, I've been doing it for a long time. I've designed these things for film, all kinds of costuming. It's what I do. Act 1. Yes, I know. Chitlins, Comics, and Cotton Fields, may the force be with y'all. I was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, home of Elvis. Raised in Clarksdale, Mississippi, home of Robert Johnson. Now, this is the center of the Delta. So I grew up across the street from a cotton field. My grandparents from Tupelo, all entrepreneurs, brick masons, artisans with their hands. That's what they did. They were all entrepreneurs. My other grandfather was a barber. These people knew a trade. That's how they made their living. That's how they raised their children. And their children would then go on, my parents, AJ and Rowena, also entrepreneurs. But they were also teachers. They were instructors. For 45 years, these folks did it. So I grew up in Mississippi, had a great upbringing, my brothers, 2 older brothers, twin brothers. So if you see someone who looks like me, it's not me, it's him. And we grew up around DC Comics, reading Marvel comics. Would eventually go on to read Heavy Metal magazine. But you know, when you read these things, the people in those comics really don't look like you. You know, they look like, you know, the big white guy with the muscles, and, you know, he flew away. That's what happened. So this is what I was raised up on in comics and most speculative fiction. That would go on. You know, occasionally you could diversify a little bit and have a woman, but hey, let's be frank. You know, it got a little ridiculous with that. The woman is well endowed, over-sexualized images in the way women were depicted. So these things were not really useful and expansive to most folks. And again, myself and people like me, we didn't see ourselves in that material. You know, we wanted to be the one that would fly off the roof with the expanding cape, right? We wanted to be the ones who would be able to show, you know, we're the Dark Knight. We wanted to have that opportunity too. So I went to New York, and when I went to New York, I decided to become more aggressive in terms of doing Afrofuturism, and I created a concept called Black Metropolis. Black Metropolis is where I would take elements of Santeria, Vodun, and I would merge those concepts with speculative fiction. So I would take everything fully painted to really make it hyper-real, make it heroic, but to bring it out into the world so that people could see people like me. I mean, more muscular, obviously, but see people like me doing these heroic things. That's what I wanted to do. Also with fusing music, things like that. Blending musical ideas, taking speculative ideas, fusing them with form. Somewhat involved with hip-hop culture. These things, you know, some people listen to rap, some people don't, but it's there, so we have to fuse those things into our work as well. So I did that for many years. But of course, as you're trying to make your living doing this during the 1990s, you have to manifest. You have to change the way. And in my particular case, I began to chase the shiny object. Chasing the shiny object meant trying to get work in the established system, because at that time, it was difficult to get work doing black characters, action adventure, right? Because up to that point, there were, beyond Lando Calrissian and Lieutenant Uhura, you would see other black characters, but you remember Return of the Jedi? There was this X-Wing pilot. Well, what happened to him? It didn't work out that well for him. He got blown up. He was on the screen for about 10 seconds, right? So that didn't bode well. And then we had this guy here. Remember this guy? Remember Alien? Yaphet Kotto. He was great. He was a great actor, a great character. He was smart. He was one of the most intelligent crew members. Didn't work out too well for him either. You know, that chest burster thing was really not good for him, right? So I began to get work. I worked around for Marvel Comics and places like that. And I began to get this work because I had children, I had a family, and I still wanted to remain being an artist, but it was difficult to create in that environment. And the world, as you're manifesting, sometimes is not in the same place you are. So you have to show patience when you're manifesting. I had to manifest. So finally, we came down to what I call the diesel funk way. Now, the diesel funk way means willing what you want, being aware of your environment and willing what you want through that environment. So I created a concept called Maddies Rocket. Now, Maddies Rocket is based loosely on the life of a pilot. Her name is Bessie Coleman. She actually lived during the Harlem Renaissance, and she was the first internationally licensed African-American pilot. She couldn't get a license in the United States, so she's from Texas. She saved her money. She went to France to get her license. It's quite incredible. She was doing that when it wasn't safe to do it. So I took elements of her life, I took elements of Harriet Tubman's life, fused them together, and named them after my great-grandmother, whose name was Matty. Now, why did I do that? Afrofuturism, in this particular case, I call it retro Afrofuturism. It's true. So what I did was I took all those things I love, Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, and I brought them together. And I always tell folks, well, Maddies Rocket is like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, those serials from the 1930s, only with Lena Horne in the main role. That's what I did. So I did all of these things, and initially, because I love motion, I began to do it as digital animation. So I designed everything. I wanted it to be like a movie. I wanted it to be powerful. So I went through that, and I created multiple episodes of Matty doing her thing. But, let's be frank. Animation is hard. It's really laborious. So for every frame you see, there's like a billion other frames you have to draw. And it's cool. I love it, but it's incredibly hard work. So I would keep going because I'm not afraid of hard work. And I had some very good friends who set me down, and they told me, you got to change the way. So I had to manifest again. There's a filmmaker by the name of Alejandro Jodorowsky. He's a great filmmaker, and he's in this documentary called Jodorowsky's Dune. I show it in my classes. And he said, sometimes to hear no does not mean no. It means to change the way. So that's what I did. I knew I had to change the way. And that's when I created Diesel Funk Studios. Now, I created Diesel Funk Studios for a reason. I wanted to have a clearinghouse for my ideas. I didn't want to hear no. I didn't want to hear, oh, this is too much. Or, oh, this is not good enough. I wanted to be able to do it my way and send my vision of Afrofuturism out into the world. So what did I do? I didn't stop doing Maddies Rocket. I simply changed the way. So I went back to my first love. I changed Maddies Rocket into a comic book. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, in the last year and a half, I have never been this busy in my life. It is ridiculous. I've been all over the country, sleeping in interesting hotel rooms, moving all over the country, paneling in different events. So sometimes you hear that statement where a person is close to their goal and they stop. It doesn't mean you should stop. It means you should change your angle, change your perspective on it a little bit. And that's what I did. And by moving my perception just a little bit, I opened myself up to opportunity. I began to say yes. I began to manifest what is most important. And while I did that in the comic book, and I'm very proud of what I've done, I began to also take my teaching and to give back. Here's a bit of irony for you. Young Lights Comics, hey, I do selfies wherever I go. And these are 25 African-American young girls in Clarksdale, Mississippi, where I was raised. Just this past summer, I was actually brought to Clarksdale to teach these young African-American girls how to do comics. It's incredible what we did. This is my favorite, fashionista squad. It's pretty interesting. Hey, I guess they went around defending fashion. I love working with these girls. It was fun working with Delta State and all these different types of things out there. It was fun. The irony is that I was teaching kids how to do something that I was made fun of doing when I was a young boy. It's amazing how, remember, the world catches up with you. You stick to your goal. You shift your perspective. That's what you do. That went great. So I've been teaching Afrofuturism, comics, comic book workshops all over the country. It's been a lot of fun, exhausting, but fun. Been doing it. One of the greatest things was being involved with the Mississippi Book Festival. That was a lot of fun. Most recently, I just adapted a comic book story by the father of black science fiction, Samuel R. Delany. That was an amazing experience. Doing an interview and then doing a comic. That's moving it forward, passing it forward. To make it even crazier, I started something called Afrofuture Fest. I'm an Afrofuturist, so I decided to start Afrofuture Fest. And it was the first branded booth in New York City Comic-Con history. And that was pretty amazing because what we did was we created a safe space for cartoonists and creators and writers of color to create and showcase and vend their work in a large corporate environment. We want to move things forward. We want to move people forward. That's what it was about. We're lifting off. Very important. Now, I'm going to say this last thing because it's not just about Afrofuturism. It's about any futurism. It's about anyone from any part of our culture moving themselves forward. You have to visualize what you want. This is the hard part. You visualize what you want. What do you want? I want to make cakes. I want to make cars. I want to draw comic books. You visualize it. And you don't even have to know all of the different parts. Why? Because then you ask for help. And sometimes when you're asking for help, you don't even know you need it. It's just that as you ask for that help, people come out because to ask someone for something solicits a response. And so these things come back to you. So things I didn't even know I needed came to me. And then finally, you have to work your butt off. That's that other part. You got to work your butt off. You got to sit there and do the labor. You got to lift that table. You got to sit yourself down at that screen and do that artwork. It's important. Visualize, ask, work. Now, I would say this. This is the challenge to the audience here. We have women here. We have men here. We have people of color here. I want to see a Hindu Captain Kirk. I do. I want to see a Muslim Wonder Woman. Why not? To do these type of things, to engage in Afrofuturism, to engage in moving people of color forward in the culture, moves our society forward. It's only to our benefit to do so. The biggest way to keep from creating an angry black man, let me say this again, I want you to listen to this. The easiest way to keep from creating an angry black man or woman of color, turn them into a nerd. I'm serious, turn them into a nerd. When they feel like they can be included in speculative fiction, science fiction, it gives a release valve. It allows them to see themselves in the future. They exist. Give them the opportunity to exist so that we can move our society forward. I want you guys to remember this last thing, two things. You are encapsulated in light. I always end my sessions with that. Why is that? Because everything is manageable. Everything is doable. Even when you don't see it, the light moves you forward. So I'm going to ask everyone to participate in one thing. I was told I could do this. I'm going to take a selfie like I always do. Hey, I wasn't going to give up this opportunity, so I'm going to turn the camera around here. We're going to put this, and I want everyone to raise their fingers. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Thank you very much.